May the words of my mouth and the meditations of all our hearts be acceptable in your sight, O Lord. Please be seated. One of the things that I'm really struck by on this reading is that there's demons. And some of you may remember when we had our first Pride service ever last year, and we had Will McGarvey from the Solano Pride Center here preaching, and he was using images on our slides about demons, and some like fairly graphic images of demons, because there are people who've noted that if you put the words pride and month together, you can see the word demon in them. And I find that really ironic, because this isn't the same week as that. And yet here we are with another Pride service with a gospel story about demons. So I'm wondering what we're supposed to take away from this. Like what is it? Why do we keep having Pride services with gospel stories, strange gospel stories really involving demons? So I thought maybe we could spend some time with the story and maybe see what God's trying to get our attention with this. So Jesus and his disciples, they'd been down in Crockett. They were on a boat across the bay. They landed over in the Benicia waterfront. And there's this guy. He's there. You've probably seen him when you've gone down there to, go to one of those Benicia festivals, or, maybe you're running errands, you need to go down to Benicia. Maybe you've seen him in the Vallejo Costco parking lot. He hangs out there sometimes. He usually doesn't have a lot of clothes on. His hair's all crazy. He's yelling stuff. So this guy that like everybody knows, he comes up to Jesus at the Benicia waterfront. And he's all, yelling stuff. And Jesus is like, hey, what's your name? And he says, Legion, because there was a legion of demons in him. I want to put a pin for Pastor's Forum in the fact that legion is a word for a large amount of Roman soldiers. That is important. That is not going to explore that here, but just pin in that for those of you going to Pastor's Forum. So Legion, who's got 5,000 or so, whatever, demons in him, and Jesus heals him. First the demons recognize Jesus, and they're like, hey, don't send us to the abyss. And then Jesus and the demons all look up, and at one of the hills, there's a whole bunch of pigs, because there's this new artisanal bacon and sausage place in Benicia that's got these special artisanal, pigs that they're raising, special hogs, and they're up there kind of on a hillside eating grass, living their best pig lives. And the demons are like, hey, can we just go there? And Jesus is like, sure. Get out of the sky, go up to those pigs, and then the pigs fling themselves off the cliff and into the bay. Meanwhile, our friend, he gets cleaned up. He's no longer possessed by demons. He goes and he has a shower, a haircut, a shave, and he and Jesus are sitting at one of the restaurants. They're sitting outside in downtown Benicia. They're eating. His hair is combed, it's kempt. He's got on pressed clothes and pressed khakis with a crease in them. He's got on his topsiders. He's a different guy. He's like in his right mind. Perfectly normal conversation with Jesus. And the people in the town are like, first of all, what happened to those pigs? We were really looking forward to that bacon. Wait a minute. How is our guy Our guy that we know this guy as being possessed and being kind of scary, and this is how we know him. What happened? And he's like, well, Jesus happened. Jesus came and healed me, and now I'm just like you. And the townspeople are not like, well, great, come on in and join us. The townspeople flip out, right? They flip out. They can't handle that this guy who they put in this box is now just like them. So what happens is we're told that they're afraid and they run Jesus out, and our friend is like, hey, Jesus, can I go with you? I don't want to stay with them. And Jesus is like, no, you have to go tell everybody what God has done for you. So one of the things that really strikes me in this story is the townspeople and the way the townspeople respond. And maybe when you hear this story, you are thinking of your own demons, your own things that have caused you trouble. So we are identifying with our friend Legion. But maybe our invitation here on this Pride Sunday is to identify with the townspeople and think about how we respond to people that are different, how we respond to these changes in society. One of the things that I'm also struck by, as we have, again, our second Pride Sunday, second demon story on Pride Sunday, is the amount of LGBTQ plus people who have been exorcised for having been possessed by demons because of who they are, who they love, how their gender presents in themselves. The people who have undergone horrific gay conversion therapy on behalf of Jesus. The people who are disowned from their families, who are told you can't be with us because, God says you're not supposed to be that way. I also want to note that a lot of the times when we hear these stories in the Gospels about people being possessed by demons, we think of mental illness. There's the Diagnostic Standards Manual, which is a tool that psychiatrists and psychologists and therapists use to diagnose people. Until 1973, homosexuality was listed as a disorder in the DSM. A disorder. There is something wrong with you. And even then, they didn't just take it out. They changed it to sexuality disturbance until 1987. That's not even 40 years ago that we are still feeling the need to diagnose gay people. And I wonder who needs the healing? Who needs to be healed by Jesus? I don't think it's the LGBTQ people that need the healing. I think it's the townspeople in this story. It's us. And maybe it feels like I'm preaching to the choir. Maybe most of you are like, well, Reverend Katherine, I'm pretty darn open. I have lots of gay friends. And I'm sure that's true. I mean, this is a pretty progressive, we are an inclusive church. One of the things that we also need to recognize is that there are a whole lot of churches that are not inclusive. There are probably today, somewhere at some Pentecostal church, there is a young struggling gay teenager who is being exorcised as we speak, who is being told, you are not in the image of God. Maybe there is some kid that's having a conversation with their mom saying, I'm not in the right body. And that mom is going to the Bible and finding clobber passages that are taken out of context, that we're told this is where it says that this is wrong. I spent the weekend at the cathedral in Sacramento in the discernment weekend with quite a few LGBTQ people. And one of the things that they were all talking about was how hard it is to be a gay Christian. And that's something that I never understood. I never understood that it was hard for queer people to come to church. I didn't get that until it got explained to me that there has been so much hurt by churches in the gay community, so much damage. Conversion therapy is a horrific thing. Being told that, well, you're made in God's image, but not really you, because if you want to be made in God's image, you have to be someone who you are not. That is extremely damaging. So you have this community of people who have been hurt in the name of God, in the name of Jesus. These people have been devastated and hurt and told they don't belong. And you have people who go to an Episcopal church or a UCC church or somewhere where they are included. Often they're not included in all Christian churches. They're included in some. And then when they go back into the gay community, they are often told, why are you Christian? Like it's kind of like you're a traitor, because we have been so hurt by this whole group. And the hurt has been so bad that people can't see that there are churches that do love them just as they are. There are churches that believe that they do not need to be fixed or healed or changed. So that's something that we want to understand. That, you know what? We all, in our spiritual journey, have things that could use a little sandpaper, right? We all need to change and to grow. But one thing that doesn't need to change is who people love, how their gender presents. We as Christians want to recognize that there is nothing wrong. We also want to recognize that it is important to make that welcome, that it is important to not be the townspeople in this story, to be the people that say, I see you and I love you. I see you and I love you for who you are. Because that's what we're called to do as Christians, is to respect the dignity of every human being and recognize that even our friend Legion, who was possessed by demons, is still made in the image of God, is still worthy of love without having been healed. People are always, all people are worthy and deserving of God's love and of ours. I want to close with a poem. This is something that my good friend Emily, who's the first trans woman priest in our diocese, and she sent me this. It's called Jesus in the Gay Bar. He's here in the midst of it, right at the center of the dance floor, robes hitched up to his knees to make it easier to spin. At some point in the evening, a boy will touch the hem of his robe and beg to be healed, beg to be anything other than this. And he will reach out his arm, sweat damped and weary from dance. He'll cup the boy's face in his hand and say, "My beautiful child, there is nothing in this heart of yours that ever needs